Hello, Judy. You're on mute.
Okay. Now I think I'm fine.
Good.
So how are you?
Great.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, here's Kate. Now, I'm concerned everyone's getting in without being admitted.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's not good. I was supposed to have to admit everyone.
Did you change a setting?
We set it up so I had to admit people, but maybe you guys come in automatically because of the way it was set up.
I hope, but I don't want to go. We don't want to go through this again. Although when I do Zoom meetings, I have to let everybody in.
Right, that's how I normally am.
Yeah. Has there been any other issues?
Yeah, we almost had a Zoom bomb at Kona yesterday.
Really?
Someone tried to get in, I didn't let him in.
Huh. So maybe just, if you don't know, but it's a public meeting. I don't know. It's always weird.
Well, but I still have to decide who can come in. If it's obvious they're not. Well,
Right.
I know that's hard to say who's obvious.
I know you don't know everybody's email or however they present themselves.
Well, hold on. Let me turn off recording for a moment.
Thank you for being here. I won't go through the Zoom protocol. Just best thing to do is to raise your hand if you want to speak. I can't display everybody all at once, or speak up if it goes very long. If we get Zoom bombed again, it's Mark's problem.
I know.
Mark, you got to deal with it.
All right.
Okay.
Before 5-pack if that happens.
We'll work through whatever we have to.
We'll deal with it.
So I'm going to call the meeting to order. I see on the agenda you have approval of the agenda. Do we need to do that formally if it's a scheduled meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Rick, I have a suggestion for the agenda.
Yes.
Linda, can we move 5.3 and make it 6.1?
Sure. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So I'll make a motion. To approve the agenda as presented with the modification that item 5.3 will become 6.1. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, just raise your
Aye.
hand. Okay, is that unanimous for all the members?
Mm-hmm.
It is. That's unanimous. Okay. Next up, the minutes from February 9th, 2021. I read through them. They seem quite accurate. Any comments, corrections? I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
I abstained because I wasn't there.
Okay, note that, Linda. Thank you.
Yep.
The motion passes. Next up is audience of citizens. Is there anything anybody would like to bring up to us that isn't already on our agenda? Either a member or a non-member.
I am a non-member and I would like to have audience for citizens.
Chris Tolsdorf.
That's me.
Tolsdorf.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Welcome. Thank you for attending.
Glad to be here.
Please go ahead.
Okay, I sent an email to Mark with the information that I wanted to share with the with your commission, and I think it would be helpful for me to explain a little bit why I wrote that email. I don't know whether he's going to read it into the minutes or not, but it had to do with the FIPAC and the procedure for approving funds for disbursement for the purchase of open space land. There are two mechanisms that are used for funding, at least in our town primarily, which involves new monies being raised to purchase properties that have been approved for purchase by the Board of Selectmen. And in that case, the procedure is to send the proposal through FIPAC to evaluate the financial impact of the purchase on the town's budget and to make a recommendation on either how to finance it or whether or not financing it in any way is feasible. However, there's a second way that occurs when there is money in the dedicated open space account. This is money that has been set aside from different sources to be used exclusively for open space. Some of this money is money that FIPAC had previously approved for previous purchases. Some of it is money that has been raised through fee and lieu, monies that have come in from real estate developments. But the thing about the money is that it can only be used for open space. It can only be used to purchase property. It has no impact on the budget because it's not raising any new money from taxes, and it doesn't affect any budget lines. But under the current protocols, that still has to go through FIPAC for approval. And it seems to me that since the money might have already been approved by FIPAC, and since it has no impact at all on the budget, the Board of Selectmen should be empowered to disperse that money to purchase property as they see fit. Any purchase of property, of course, still has to be approved by town meeting. So the town still has the townspeople still have the final say in whether the land is purchased. But it allows the Board of Selectmen more latitude to disperse money that's there in the account and is sitting there doing nothing. And it allows them to put it to work and does so without sending it through FIPAC. Now, FIPAC, of course, will be notified and should be kept in the loop so they understand what's going on. But having to send that back through FIPAC, I think, is a redundant step, and I think it's unnecessary and slows the process down and creates possible hurdles to accomplishing the goal of purchasing the property that the Board of Selectmen want to purchase. So my recommendation, I don't know how this would fit into the charter precisely, because I read the charter today and I wasn't sure exactly what paragraph that would go into or where it would fit. But I think it would be worthwhile considering giving the Board of Selectmen the authority to disperse open space, dedicated open space monies for land that the town has agreed to purchase without having to have FIPAC approval.
Appreciate your comments. They're well taken, well understood. I think you presented it well too. That's something that we'll have a discussion as a commission about. We appreciate the input.
Okay, glad to share it.
Yeah, we most definitely will. Actually, would anyone like to weigh in on it now? I mean, there's nothing like having that information presented and having some perspective on it. I think if we spend a few minutes on it now, it would be productive. Any thoughts from the commission on Mr. Tolsdorf's recommendation?
Yeah, I would.
Lisa, I'll get.
We can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Paul.
Go ahead, Paul, and then Lisa had something she wanted to say, and let me know if anyone else. Go ahead, Paul.
All right. Well, this actually falls into where I was before we were so rudely interrupted at the last meeting. This is actually in the Land Acquisition Fund, the statute 8. I've lost my page. I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. Go ahead, Lisa, and then let me come back.
Hi, Lisa. Go ahead.
I understand sometimes speed is necessary when you're talking about purchasing land. and getting a bid in. But FIPAC, that's their job, is to keep good controls and good reins on our finances. And even though, yes, it has been appointed to, and money has been given to your committee, it's actually taxpayer money. And FIPAC is charged with overseeing that. And I wouldn't want, it's a checks and balances. And I don't know, I'd rather see it stay where it is. If something needs to be rushed, I would think that FIPAC would have an emergency meeting and do that for you. But I kind of like the checks and balances myself.
Okay, Paul, you all set?
Yeah, all right,
Thank
so
you.
we're on section 815, the Open Space Committee. And,
Oh, can you talk louder?
I can't hear you.
oh, sorry. All right, in the charter, it's section 815, the Open Space Committee. And it refers to the Columbia Ordinance 8-13, the Land Acquisition Fund. And this is where I was interrupted last meeting. The section refers to the state statute, which is, it actually is wrong. It is incorrect. It listed as 7-13R, and it's actually under Title 7 and Section 7-131R Land Acquisition.
Want me to put that on the screen, everybody?
Yeah, I'm not sure what,
Well, in any event, what the general statute says is that there shall be deposited in said fund, any municipality by vote of the legislative body may establish a special fund which would be known as the Land Acquisition Fund. So you
Paul,
have,
should I bring 715 up?
It's 8:15.
815, thanks, Henry.
okay.
but
Okay,
it really doesn't say too much, because what it does is it refers to
A town ordinance.
a town ordinance, which in fact, then refers to a state statute. And the state statute says that a municipality may establish a special fund, which will be known as the Land Acquisition Fund. Then it goes on to say there shall be deposited in said fund annually an amount, and it goes on to say that it should not exceed 2 mils. But I think that it's pretty clear that it says there shall be deposited in said fund, that something should be deposited, and that's what Columbia doesn't do. And that's the first thing that I would say. That now I don't know what our authority is, whether we make recommendations to change ordinances, because what the charter says is that the Columbia Ordinance 813, the Land Acquisition Fund, is duly enacted and amended from time to time. So it can be amended from time to time. Whether we make a recommendation and then that goes to the selectmen, but my recommendation would be that you should, in fact, on a regular annual basis, contribute to the Land Acquisition Fund. And then it goes on to say in paragraph 4 that, in the ordinance, that the funds for the purposes for which it is created may be made upon the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen and the approval of FIPAC. That's what Chris talked to, and that's what Open Space is in fact going to present a position that we really don't believe that FIPAC should have any authority in this, because I think Chris explained it extremely well. Open Space is charged with selecting appropriate open space and referring that to the Board of Selectmen, who then vote on the purchase. And that should be it. It goes to town meeting, and that should be it.
Is somebody throwing plates around or something?
Yeah, I can't understand a word.
Yes, somebody has some noise going on in the background. It sounds like plates being moved around.
Somebody's doing dishes, washing dishes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Now
now
they
it's gone.
stopped. I know, Paul, it was hard to hear what you were saying.
Oh, dear.
Maybe I could frame this. So we have two opposing perspectives that have been presented here. One feels that the re-review or the review at the time of correct me if this is wrong, disbursement should go back through 5PAC. And then we also have the perspective that we should take those shackles off and let 5PAC, let the land acquisition fund go to work without going back through 5PAC. Is that a fair summary?
Rick, I'd like to add one more point to that. The question is whether it should be dealt with in the charter or in an ordinance, because it now is dealt with in an ordinance. And in an ordinance can be adjusted at any time to fit the needs of the town, whereas the charter is something more sacrosanct and only gets changed every 10 years. So I think we should also consider in mind whether this should remain an ordinance issue. And I don't want to step on Paul's toes or anybody's toes to say that it can't change and that 5PAC's role couldn't be changed or whatever, but it may be beneficial to tinker with it in the ordinance where there's opportunity to adjust it again before 10 years if it's not suiting the town's needs. And
So
I agree with you, Henry, and that's in fact what I said, which might not have been very clearly stated. But I just thought whether this commission could make a recommendation that ordinance be amended.
Well, I think that that's not really our role here. I think the role is revising the charter. And if we feel as a group that we want that delegated to the Board of Selectmen and their power to enforce and amend from time to time, I think that's maybe the most central question. Tell me, the way you framed it, Henry, I think was well said. At least my personal perspective.
We could easily tell the selectmen, and certainly is going to be in our minutes, that this issue came up and that we thought it was not a matter for the charter, but it was a matter for consideration or examination, because I think Chris made some good points. Lisa made some good points too. There are things to look at. And I called that statute up on my other computer. And while it does go into saying there shall be deposited an amount into that, but it says as may be appropriated by the municipality. So it can still be any amount up to the limit there, including zero. So the town is in compliance with that statute. And so I think there are two questions that have been raised by Paul. Is one, should there be a minimum each year? And two, should 5PAC weigh in after the minimum has been established, because this money can only be used for open space acquisition. After that, it can't be moved to any other line item or adjusted with respect to the town budget. And that's worthy of consideration.
Yeah, it did seem like what Chris was saying, that it was kind of a redundant procedure, made a lot of sense. But if it's something that is more suitable to being in an ordinance, then that's a whole different issue.
Is there any type of perspective from the commission, even a consensus, that it's something that we may want to clearly identify as being controlled by the Board of Selectmen through an ordinance, as opposed to being part of the charter? Because something like this, if we're looking for flexibility, and I understand the need for flexibility, I think just simply delegating it to the Board of Selectmen may be the most efficient approach here.
Yeah, see, I would agree with, I think Chris made a lot of sense. Once it's voted into a line item, then other things that go into a line item, we don't have to send it back to FIPAC. It's just,
Yeah, I'm just suggesting that we don't deal with it at all. And we
Yeah.
suggest that that's a Board of Selectmen issue. How does the feel about that?
I think it's a great idea to send it back to the Board of Selectmen.
Any other thoughts from the commission? I'd love to hear anybody who doesn't share that perspective. I think it's a very clean way to deal with the issue, and any modification, if we're all in agreement, where we can come to a consensus, as opposed to, that's an ideal way to approach an issue like this. If anyone doesn't agree, I'd love to hear from them. Okay, so I think we have a clear perspective on that. We'll make note of that in our minutes and come up with a way to clearly address it that leaves the control of that and the administration of it in the realm of an ordinance as identified in the charter, and only identify what we need to in the charter to keep the charter streamlined and efficient and not needing modification from time to time. Does that make sense?
It does,
Yes.
Okay.
definitely.
All right.
I guess if I may, just quickly piling on, I think even if you were to take a position in the charter, you would create a conflict with the ordinance that would have to be resolved through either amending or repealing the ordinance anyway. And if you put something in the charter that says one thing and the ordinance isn't repealed or amended, you're in a worse position than you are now. And I guess philosophically too, if you're going to be looking at handling funds that have already been appropriated for certain purposes, you might not necessarily want to limit it to open space. I mean, if you have capital non-recurring expenses that have already been, funded and appropriated for, do those need to go back through FIPAC or not? So it may be more of a global issue in addition to just the land acquisition.
One other point that I would like to make is, where possible, if we don't need to, from a legal perspective, identify a specific ordinance number, but rather delegate the commission or the board that's in charge of enforcing something. It makes it much easier if they have to change the ordinance numbering system in the future, because that puts us in conflict with the ordinance numbering. We've encountered that a lot in planning and zoning, where we tend to delegate in a general way as opposed to referencing specific ordinances and things like that. It just makes for a document that doesn't need modification from time to time, as long as we can come up with verbiage that we're all comfortable with.
That makes sense.
So,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No, I think that all makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much for considering it so thoughtfully.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up, and it's been brought up previously, and I think we came to a quick perspective on that as a commission, and I appreciate all the effort. Let me move on to the next item. That was under audience of citizens. Under old business, we have item 5.1, the review and discussion of the latest updated Redline draft of the charter from town council. Rich, would you like to talk through that, or Henry, or a combination?
I'll defer to Rich. I don't know whether people have looked through it. I think Rich has done the drafting. I think he's done a good job. There's some comments that need to be addressed at some point, but I think he's reflected where the commission was at.
Yeah, I mean, I guess first question is whether people have had a chance to look at it and whether they had any questions. And frankly, if people haven't had a chance to look at it, it might be more worthwhile for you to continue through the sections that you have on the new business for tonight. Alternatively,
I would agree. I haven't had a chance to digest all of the redlining. I started and haven't really finished. And I think we would be a lot more productive if we did just that. I'm sharing the 50-page PDF that we most recently got. So instead of going through it point by point, why don't we summarize our perspectives on the different comments in there and not take up time at this meeting. That, everyone agree with that?
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that, Rich.
Sure.
Let's, 5-pack and Board of Selectmen recommendations. Help me out here. Where in here in our packet is that?
At the end.
It's in the
Yes.
minutes, Rick. It's just the minutes from Board of Selectmen, what they recommended
Here it
concerning
is.
transfers, and the minutes from 5-pack. And basically, Board of Selectmen made some dollar amount transfers to up them for the next decade. 5-pack only upped the lower minimum of 500 to 1,000 and left everything else the same. So my recommendation is I'll bring back 5-pack's recommendation to the Board of Selectmen and see if they'd like to make any other considerations in light of what 5-pack's wishes are, and then report back to the committee.
So I have the Board of Selectmen recommendations here on the screen, the minutes from the Board of Selectmen meeting. Anyone like to delve into this tonight, or are we going to wait until we get the additional input? Any thoughts? I'd rather wait till we get the finalized input from the Board of Selectmen via 5-pack.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you can see all those changes. The only change 5-pack wanted to make was each transfer shall be limited to a maximum of, they changed it from 500 to 1,000 without approval of 5-pack. So 5-pack wants to look at everything over 1,000. Board of Selectmen was trying to jump it up to 5,000. So I'd be more comfortable having that discussion with Board of Selectmen and then bring it back to you.
Good, well taken, thank you.
Rick, just,
Yes.
I was wondering, before we move forward, do we want to pick up where Paul was so rudely interrupted? Because we hadn't really finished Article 8 before moving on to Article 9.
Yes, thank you for suggesting that. Were we like at 8:13? I forget exactly where we were.
Well, 8:15 was the one he was bringing up, so I think we had just gotten as far as 8:15, and we've talked about that. So I would suggest we start from there, unless anybody else suggested we need to go back at all.
Okay. Let's go to that point. I'm going to bring up section the charter as I have it on my desktop here. Getting faster with this.
You're doing well.
Okay, we've gotten through, help my recollection, we've gotten through 8:13.
8:15, I think, was where we were at.
Yeah, 8:15 was where we were at. Okay.
Just did that.
So section 8:15, the most recent discussion that we had may be that we want to modify this so that we leave the authority delegated by the name of the board and not reference the ordinance specifically, if that's going to be legally efficient. And I'd rely on a perspective from Henry and Rich on that. So
Yeah, I think we can refer to the title and just say the applicable ordinance on land acquisition fund. Maybe
Okay.
or something like that, and leave it to Rich, but I think we can make good on your suggestion, Rick.
Yeah, I think that's sufficient. I mean, frankly, if the ordinance itself says who has to enforce it, you don't need to have it in here as well, but, it might be a good cross-reference.
So that said, there is the modifying phrase as duly enacted and amended from time to time, but it does identify a specific ordinance number. So describing the ordinance and then leaving the as duly enacted and amended from time to time might be more efficient. The same under Recreation Commission in the first paragraph. So if we could modify that one also to have a similar convention there.
Yeah, and I think as duly enacted and amended from time to time might be something that we can bring back to the definition or construction section at the beginning and just say all references to statutes or ordinances are as they exist from time to time.
Point well taken. Thanks. I'm making notes here. I know you are, Linda, also, but all right. So second paragraph under 816, the Recreation Commission, any changes that are needed here? I don't think we've had any input suggesting that we need to change the verbiage here. Are we all good with this?
Yeah, I don't,
If I don't hear a nay, I'm going to move on to the next section. There shall be a resident trooper who shall serve in accordance with the provisions of section 29-5 of the Connecticut General Statutes. Unless there's a reason to retain the specific Connecticut General Statute, or if you feel that those general statute numbering conventions are very stable, Rich, any suggestion whether we should go away from specific statute numbers into something more generalized?
Actually, I have a more basic question.
Yes, Mark.
Why is this even in the charter? Can it be just a decision by the town whether to include it? Are we forced to have a resident trooper? Or if we choose to have one, does the statute make us put it in our charter? Just doesn't, I don't think it gives the town flexibility if they decide to go against it. Right now, we're stuck with one.
I'll weigh in on that from an individual perspective. I think the change away from utilizing a resident trooper and establishing a police department, needing some sort of law enforcement or some other method and changing the way that we were going to enforce our laws in town, it's a huge issue. And I would think that an emergency charter revision would be something to address. I look at this as a very substantive part of the way we operate in town. And I wouldn't want to quite frankly, leave that to another method of being changed other than being studied by a commission with a lot of outside scrutiny.
Well, I guess you're looking at it in another direction than I was. Let's say the state decides that there's new rules or a heck of a lot more expense to it, and the town is starting to scream saying, "Hey, this isn't worth it. We want to go without a resident state trooper." How would that happen? I'm trying to do a what if, because right now we're rather restricted. If this is,
I think at that point we would have to think about having a special charter revision commission to create a police department.
Yeah.
Or go back to constables.
Wow.
And change it, because I agree with Rick that part of governing the town is to provide for law enforcement of some sign, keeping the peace and so forth. And at least the blueprint for that is usually in the charter, as opposed to in some other fashion. And I don't know, Rich, do you know whether 29.5 talks about it being something that can be done by ordinance?
No, I haven't looked at that. I just looked at check to make sure that that was the correct cross reference.
And Rick, I have an idea. It's Mark.
Mark.
Another thing that could happen is that state statute allows jurisdiction to merge where, let's say Hebron has a resident trooper and a pretty robust police force, and then we just join them regionally and create a Hebron Columbia police force where we just give them a stipend and their police force covers our town. But now we have a charter that says we have to have our own resident trooper. Now our hands are tied. So I think this reduces some flexibility as times will evolve in how policing are done in this state. I know when I ran East Haddam, I had 2 resident troopers and constables. And then I converted it to 1 resident trooper and 4 full-time police and 2 part-time constables. So I still had a resident trooper, but I don't think our charter required a resident trooper. So this is a big issue.
Yep, Mark probably said it better than I. Yeah, and the point I'm trying to make is it seems rather rigid the way this is worded and having it in the charter, where if we did choose to change in whatever direction, it's a much bigger deal versus if it wasn't in the charter. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Or it sounds like we could easily do a charter revision if we wanted to change that. I know it just feels weird to me to take it out totally.
I don't think charter revisions are easy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Actually, we're making this rather easy. Thank you for everybody for your vote. You bring up a really good point, Mark. You know, this is why we exist, is to have a discussion about something like this. I think of Columbia as this very stable town where not a lot has needed to change over a long period of time. And I think of, you know, major shifts in the way we do things. Do we absolutely want it to be part of a charter review commission? I don't have a perspective on that. I'm just trying to frame the question for everybody else.
I've looked
Trying to give that perspective. If a majority of the committee is like, thank you, we'll move on, we don't think that's an issue, then I'm good with it. I don't mean to beat a dead horse if a majority of the committee thinks that.
I've looked at 29.5. It doesn't require it to be in the charter. The commission could decide to recommend to the selectmen that there just be a placeholder that say that the policing in town shall be accomplished in accordance with the applicable town ordinance as codified. But that would leave, in addition to adopting a new charter, the need for the town to pass a policing ordinance, which might start by with 29.5, but that would at least get it out of the charter and into an ordinance where it could be adjusted more regularly.
This is a really interesting question and certainly something I never thought about.
Right.
But it does seem like a sensible idea that it not be in the charter. It feels as if maybe we are, as a society, on the brink of changing a lot about the way that we organize policing. And so maybe we want to have as much flexibility as possible, and to say, well, we just amend the charter as an emergency. That's like saying, well, we'll just amend the Constitution. It is a big deal. So it does seem to make a lot of sense to think about this, putting this in a different place, as Henry was saying.
If as a group we and I'm not advocating one way or the other at this point, but as a group, if we are suggesting that maybe we don't want the charter to address the policing in a specific way, and it's basically delegated to the Board of Selectmen and town meetings as to how we structure that, it's a big decision to go in that direction. And I would suggest that we have an in-depth conversation about it that might extend beyond where we are now. I see the merits of that. Mark, you were, Mark Walter and Mark DeRocher, you're both very eloquent in what you presented. What's the thought of the rest of the commission? Is that something that you think is well advised to likely delegate back to the Board of Selectmen and not have it be rigid in the charter?
If we made it an ordinance, then it wouldn't change the concept of a state trooper. It would just give us more control over. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it would make it easier to change. And what could be here would be a placeholder that says that the policing in town is going to be handled by ordinance. And whatever way we legally describe that, but say that any constable or town employee involved in law enforcement shall be considered, a town employee or officer for purposes of this charter, because there are other provisions in this charter that deal with officers in general, and where employees fit in and so forth. And so I think we'd want to at least have them be generic as opposed to something that's outside of the charter, at least for the policing power.
So might
can
we
add-
change section 8.17 to law enforcement instead of resident troopers? And just describe that we're delegating this to the Board of Selectmen to enact and be general in this specific section?
Yeah, that would, yeah.
Yeah,
I like that it offers the flexibility. So,
I'll tell you another thought too. What's happening in the state police system is
Yeah.
they're very low on refilling with retirements coming up. And the state police #1 priority is patrolling the highways, not so much the resident trooper program. Although I think it's a great program and we're lucky we have one of the really, really good resident troopers right now. But if that changed and the state police said we're abandoning the resident trooper program, and in our charter it says we're to have a resident trooper, that becomes a real problem.
So let me suggest, if we have a near consensus about this, that Rich, if you could come up with some language that suggests a way to modify section 817, delegating the law enforcement, if that's the right phrase that we would use to retitle this section, and come up with verbiage where we delegate that, and we'll have to flow through the rest of the document to make sure it's all in harmony, but it seems like a great suggestion. I want to give credit where credit's due. Mark DeRozier,
Thanks.
thank you.
Yeah, I can do that. And I guess just one thought, looking at it from the other perspective, is that by taking it out of the charter and having it be either a Board of Selectmen or a town meeting decision, you invite the opportunity to have arguments about the same subject much more frequently than you do if it's only looked at every time you do a charter revision.
I'd be very much in favor if we were changing the way of policing in town to have to go to a town meeting. And maybe that's my own perspective, you know, having a way for the public to weigh in as opposed to it simply being a Board of Selectmen process. And that may involve a public hearing for something this major, but yeah, I would want to retain the public's input on this.
Well, Rick, it seems like this would be, we're always saying when we're lobbying in the General Assembly, there would be a major fiscal note about this. And this, it would be such a budgetary tsunami that it's hard to imagine how it could be accomplished without a town meeting.
Okay.
Unless I'm, off base.
Well, no, that's well taken. So no reference to whether we need a town meeting in the charter, but I delegate this. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
There is a provision back at the beginning that says the things that have to go to a town meeting, and we could simply add there anything involving policing or law enforcement has to be decided at a town meeting rather than by the selectmen. So there is a place in the charter for that to be fit in. It also includes where we have to vote, town meeting has to vote on the acquisition of land and a few other things. We could just simply add there that any change in the method of law enforcement and policing in town.
I would be in favor of that. I'd really like to make sure that would be such a dramatic and seismic shift in the way that we've done things for so long. That's clearly something I would want to have the public weigh in on.
Well, Henry, when you first said anything, regarding law enforcement, I was going to say that's way too broad.
Or substitute.
But when you narrowed it down to anything related to, I think you said the method of policing, that I could certainly support that.
Method or structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can find the right words and then make some suggestions, and then everybody can say whether it's too strong or too weak when we get down to wordsmithing.
Perfect.
I guess
That's
to
right.
understand the downside and the upside to doing it either way. If it's just, gaining control, I guess I can understand that, but just to see what the other issues could be.
So
if
you
we
saw this
change.
scrolling. I'm going to move us past this. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. 818, I don't see any need for a change here unless, again, we're referring to the name of a commission that's been stable for some time as best as I recollect, but I'd ask Mark to weigh in on that. Mark Walter.
And what was the question again, Rick?
About section 818, it refers to a specific name of the Solid Waste / Recycling Advisory Commission. So I assume that's the current name of the commission, and there's no thought that we need to change the name of that in the next 10 years.
Well, it is a regional commission that we're part of called Mid-Nerock. And here's what's weird, though. There shall be a solid waste recycling advisory commission consisting of a maximum of 5 members. Solid Waste Recycling Advisory Commission shall be responsible for preparing and presenting a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. Okay, this is out of date because we joined Mid-Nerock, which is a regional solid waste recycling advisory commission, of which I send our public works director to represent us. So I'm going to have to look into that.
So maybe the term here would be the Solid Waste / Recycling Advisory Commission, or other responsible entity as designated by the Board of Selectmen.
Well, but let me ask you this, Mark. If we were having to decide to relocate or make some kind of change at the landfill, or when we made the decision at one point that everything was going to have to be in those recycling bags, and there was going to be a fee for those bags, wasn't that done by locally?
I was on that commission, and we went through that whole process of pay as you go. And when it was defeated by the town, nobody wanted to do it. This commission basically dissolved. I don't think there are 5 members. I don't think there is a commission anymore.
Correct.
Other than what Mark said we participate in.
But I'm curious as to whether, and I'm just asking questions, whether there might still be a need for some local commission for that reason when we might need it, because I think the selectmen at that time liked the fact that they could hand that off to a special group to look at and study and so forth. And it might be on a topic that wasn't regional. I do think it needs to be looked at, but whether we do away with the possibility of having a local one or not is a question. I suppose we can do away with it, and the board selectmen can always create an ad hoc committee or something.
Well, it's to the issue that this is a dynamic situation, and
Right.
things change, and we have a charter that addresses it in a way that is no longer relevant, or not so much not relevant, but no longer reflecting the way we're doing business. So some sort of, do we even want to address solid waste in the charter?
Yeah,
No, I mean, my thought is that if the agency basically disbanded some time ago, there's no point in memorializing it here. 826 authorizes the Board of Selectmen to set up any new agencies, with
Good, that's what I was looking
people
for.
that they think are important.
So let's just delete 8.18. And
I agree.
Well, shouldn't we
Okay.
have some reference to the statute or the ordinance rather?
I don't think we need to in the charter. You know,
It sounds like that's a matter of contract, is it?
Yeah, it's an interlocal agreement.
Yeah.
Arthur, you know, just take a step back and say, do we even need to address it in the charter in any way?
No, we really don't, but I was just thinking.
If it's out, it would come under public works or whatever. And that, as Rich points out, that it's an interlocal agreement between the town and the region, and we could change to a different region, or that could switch around. It's not governed by ordinance. So the only reason to have this is if we needed something local. And I think it's good that Rich pointed out that we have 8.26 that says if a local need arises, the selectmen can create a committee for the short period of time or whatever.
And right now, your Director of Public Works is your licensed transfer station authority who signs all the authorizations with DEEP that we're in compliance with state statutes and how we run our transfer station. So I think transfer station is an area that in the future, we are going to be seeing some changes. We just don't know what, since we have no place to put our trash anymore. So it's going to become a problem real soon.
Then let me suggest we just delete 8.18. Any argument against that?
No.
We're good. Let's move on from this. Okay, and you know, we're going to revisit all these issues at a later date also, but 8.18, I'm making a note that we should delete that. 8.19, town council.
No, it says that this section shall require an affirmative vote of 4 members of the Board of Selectmen. Why is it a supermajority and not just a majority? I'm thinking it should be a majority.
I think it's so you can't change council just due to political reasons.
Yeah, I think it was to keep it apolitical, really, to make sure that the minority was represented in the decision making.
I think a supermajority is a wonderful thing. It's such a significant thing that if we were to make a change, I'd want there to be a great deal of harmony about making that change. Just a personal perspective, but I don't want to over talk anyone else's perspective on it. So Judy, you would suggest that we would just have a simple
I'm
majority?
thinking it'd just be a simple majority. So you're
Anyone
saying
else have that perspective?
Well, I think that, was it Henry?
Yes.
I think what Henry said makes a lot of sense, because if every time the majority on the Board of Selectmen changes party, they decide they want to hire a new town council, that's going to create a lot of instability, and it just doesn't seem necessary.
Yeah.
There ought to be a good reason. We should be really unhappy with our town council before
Yeah.
we do it, you know?
I guess I'm thinking that I don't know, I haven't seen that happen a lot when you change party, when there's a change in the party, majority party on the Board of Selectmen, but I don't know, it just seemed, I never know why they choose that as opposed to a majority, because most committees, it's a majority.
Well, currently you couldn't see that because it couldn't happen.
Right. Well, yeah.
You know, you have to admit, Columbia's a pretty nonpartisan run town, and some of the things that they have in our charter have made it that way. And so we've had to learn how to cooperate and get along.
Well, I agree with the first part of that statement. I have no idea if the second part is true or not.
Well, I would be in favor of leaving it the way it is. And unless there's a broad-based support to approach a change here.
This doesn't stop there being a change at any point in time. It just says both parties have to agree to the change.
Right.
Basically. And so that it makes sure that it ends up like, I'd like to think that you've picked Halloran and Sage and you found that we've been very apolitical.
Right.
We've represented very successfully Republican administrations and Democratic administrations in town without any kind of issue that said that we made a political decision.
I would support that statement, Henry. Yeah, I like that it's almost a forced apolitical decision. I think it served us well. I'm not sure who made that point, but I think that served us well. Lisa, I think you made that point. Yeah, I can't support that strongly enough. I don't ever want town council selection to become a political issue that's out of balance.
Right.
That's my perspective. I don't want to take too much of this away from other perspectives. So Judy, let's agree that you and I don't agree on this. How's that?
Okay.
And if there's any other support for going away from a supermajority, think about it. That's something we can revisit. All right. I'm going to move on to section 820. Town Health Officer. Help, Mark. I don't know how we do.
I
Does this
think
make
we're in
sense?
compliance because it also has a nuance that says who may be the director of health, the director of a health district or which the town is a participating member. So we don't have our own health officer in town. We're a member of the Eastern Highland Health District that does have a health officer.
Right.
So I think that covers us. So we could go either way. If we had our own health officer, great, but we're part of a regional health district that has a health officer. So we're in compliance with the charter.
This kind of generalized verbiage may go back to other sections of the charter. This seems to be a real effective way to verbalize when we want something to not be as specific in what we're delegating the authority to. Let's move past health officer, the town historian. So again, we're referring to a Connecticut general statute number. We can leave it, or Rich, if you think we can have a generalized description authorized per Connecticut general statutes without a specific statute notated, may be a more efficient way to have this in the charter going forward.
Okay.
Okay. Town moderator, I'm going to keep moving. Tell me if I'm going too fast. 822, town moderators for meetings. Paul, it seems to work well the way we've administered it. I don't know that we need any change here. Any thoughts? Okay, tree warden. Who's a tree warden in town?
It's right now Brian Paul and Andy Andrews of our Public Works Department.
Okay, any need for change here? This seems just fine.
No, it's working great. And also our new Public Works Director is also a licensed tree warden. So we're well represented by tree wardens.
So let's get into the WinCog thing here that doesn't exist anymore. So let's talk about regional councils of governments. Being a member of Capital Region Council of Governments, as we currently are, do we have a representative that's a CROG representative, a CROG designated representative from Columbia?
I'm designated by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay. So I think a generalized description about regional council of governments, but if that whole structure goes away, then we would need to address this in a different way through a charter revision. But I think it's safe to say that regional councils of governments aren't going to go away anytime soon. Mark Walter, what's your thought on that?
No, I think there's a legislative action about to happen that will equate regional council of governments to a what's in most of the country, which is a county. So we miss out on a lot of federal money because we don't have counties anymore in Connecticut, and the money goes to counties. So now they're legislatively going to equate a council of government to a county.
So
we
we'll
can
see
get
a
more.
merging of the various council of governments.
Right,
based
but
on-
our uniqueness that Rich Roberts should look at is that we're part of both a COG, which is in our case, Capital Region Council of Governments, but our emergency division is part of, what do we call our emergency side? Our Mike Caplet, we're part of,
Public preparedness.
yes, our public emergency preparedness is a different commission. We're part of a different cog in that sense for our emergency public preparedness. So I got to make sure that this shows that we're part of two different regions, one for emergency preparedness and one for council of government.
What about this? This also represents in the next sentence down, the regional planning commission as opposed to the council of governments. Are we still in a regional planning commission?
Yes, that's
Sure,
part of
sure,
CROG. That's half of what we do is regional planning when we're in CROG meetings.
Okay, okay.
So instead of a name, why don't we say a designated council of governments or designated regional planning commission or emergency preparedness
Right,
organization?
because let's just say CROG, which is the biggest in the state, it's over 40 towns. Let's say all of a sudden we said, now we really fit better with the Southeastern Council of Governments, and we want to go back to that. Our charter would not allow that because we state we're part of capital.
How are those changes made, Mark? Are they just made by the town saying we're leaving and asking to go to another one and having them say, yeah, we'll take you in?
I think what happened is when we went to CROG, it's because our COG dissolved.
Was falling apart, yeah.
It fell apart, so all the towns had to decide which COG to join.
Yeah, but if we were to want to change now, do we have that opportunity or?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well,
I wouldn't recommend a change, but things aren't forever. And if all of a sudden our Capital Region COG gave all their money to Hartford and we were really not feeling the love with the money coming down to the small towns, that might encourage us to move.
Yeah, well, why don't we have Rich investigate whether moving is possible so we can figure out how to make this flexible. And there does seem to be here a suggestion that we may need a change because there's two people that are discussed in this paragraph. One is the first selectman or somebody he deputizes, which could be you, which is the representative of the Council of Government. But to the Regional Planning Commission, there shall be an elector and a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission that's appointed to that. And I don't know whether we're doing that or not.
Not lately. Let me ask you a more broad question. Do we even need to address this in the charter? I mean, given that this is going to be a Board of Selectmen governed thing, because it may need to change from time to time, do we need to address it in the charter? I'm not trying to throw everything out of the charter, but ask yourself what we need to have in the charter and what we don't.
Well, I would say let's table that and ask Rich to look at it. Define one, whether you can be a town that's not in a council of government. I don't think we'd want to do that, but the main reason to have it here is to say that the town's citizens, the voters have said, we want you to be regional. We want you to think regional. And so this prevents the selectmen from just deciding we're not going to be part of any region. We're going to go it on our own.
What, and turn into Texas?
No, we're not going to turn it.
Hopefully not. I don't want to have our own grid.
Columbia has its own grid.
Yeah,
Right,
I believe the statutes require towns to be in a regional planning agency. And I believe OPM tells you which one that you're in. Before they consolidated all of them from, I think it was like 15 down to 9. It used to be a lot more flexible, moving back and forth between WinCog, CCog, NECOG, CROG, and so forth. But I think, I don't know that you have flexibility on which regional planning area you're in. But I'll definitely look into that. As far as the emergency preparedness, I would leave that out of this for now because, like that and, which DOT district you're in, those are all kind of state mandated things and relatively fluid. And I don't think we need to have those all set in granite either.
Right, we're in
Maybe-
region 4 for emergency.
Maybe we should change this section to just be something that empowers the selectmen to name our representatives to whatever regional governing bodies the town may participate in from time to time.
I would support
Because
that, Henry. I
yeah,
think that's.
Because what
appropriate.
we're trying to do here is to provide for the fact that the Board of Selectmen are going to name people.
Right.
And they're going to be town officers in one fashion or another.
And be
right.
very generalized in the description of the type of commission, when instead of a specific name, regional planning or councils of governments.
Or regional emergency management.
Well,
we
it could be just be any kind of regional governmental body. I mean, it
Right.
could be this concept of county that Mark was referencing, or we might decide suddenly there's a regional environmental issue or something for whatever. So I think the concept is that we cover the fact that we're going to participate in broader government within the region by whoever the selectmen name.
Mark DeRozier sent a message saying he got knocked out of the meeting and is in the waiting room and would like to come
Oh.
back in.
Okay, I'll let him in. He's
Oh.
coming back.
That'll teach you for Zoom bombing us.
Is this really Mark DeRozier or an
How did you get
alias?
kicked out? That's funny. So does this say that we have to be part of a one of these regional councils?
You do if you want to share in the state and federal funding that flows through those organizations.
Okay, so, but does this charter say we have to be? It
No,
says
we
it'll be a
could- we-
representative, but it doesn't say we have to be part of it.
If we rewrite it, it would just be saying that whatever ones we participate in. So if the participation could be as a matter of state statute, or it could be as a decision of the town. But whichever way it happens, it would be the selectmen would populate our representation.
I would support here that we generalize the description of the planning and council of government functions and take out the designation that the member has to be a representative, a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and sanitize this in that way. And I think that'll accomplish what we're looking for. Everyone
Yeah.
agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So we need to wordsmith here. Let's move on to 825. Each member of each town member of each town agency. Okay. I don't think we're looking for any changes here, correct?
No.
Agreed? Okay, I'm gonna move to 826. Creation of new offices.
And that's what we were talking about before with, in case we needed a recycling committee, they could create one.
I don't think we need to make any changes here either.
Right.
827.
I have a question on 826, if we could. Do we want to broaden that to allow them to create a committee within the town? you know, if we need to have a school crossing guard committee or something like that. You know, do we want to give them authority to decide that they want to have a committee that looks into that?
So maybe we just insert the word after town agencies in the first line or committee.
Well, town agencies is a defined term and it covers everything, but I would say a change shall be required from time to time by applicable Connecticut general statutes or otherwise determined by the board to be in the best interest of the town.
Yeah, using best interest in the charter, I mean, maybe isn't where we might want to go. But if I'm going to go back to the first line, shall or may create such other town agencies or town committees as may or shall be required from time to time by, I think we just add those two words, it might accomplish what we're looking
Yeah.
for.
Rick, I think Henry's point is, or question is, do we want the Board of Selectmen to be able to create committees that aren't required by statute? Because this section is only allowing them to do what may be required by statute.
Is that what you were thinking, Henry?
Yeah, and the only technical difficulty with what you suggested is that the charter defines agency as including committees of the town. So when we use agency, it means whether it's a commission, a committee, a board, whatever. So all I'm saying is, do we want to make this broader so that the town itself could decide to have a new committee without having to have a charter revision?
There's nothing else in the charter that would allow the town to do that?
No, I think the second sentence allows the Board of Selectmen with town meeting approval to create a new town agency.
Oh, there we go. There we go. You're right. It's there. It's covered.
The other thing too is that, I mean, these under Article 8, you know, at least imply some degree of permanency, and you talk about 4-year terms. I would say that the Board of Selectmen, under their general powers to superintend the affairs of the town, have the ability to establish, you know, whatever kind of short-term committees or working groups they need to, you know, to have advise them on, you know, do we need a crossing guard? Do we need trash bags? You know, those kinds of things. You know, I think this kind of reflects permanent or regulatory agencies.
So maybe we don't need to make any changes here.
Yeah.
I would agree. We
Not that
don't.
way.
Okay,
Okay.
let's move on then. Vacancies and removals.
I have one thought to just ask the board, and I don't have a position on it, but it talks about removing for cause and only for cause. These are appointed positions. Do we want to allow people to be removed without cause? There may be good cause, but you may not want to go public with whatever the cause is. And if you can't remove without cause, then the only way you can do it is to kind of twist the person's arm and have them resign. But if it's an appointed position as opposed to an elected position, it would seem that you serve at the discretion of the person who appoints you. Just like the president can remove his Secretary of State and put somebody else in if he decides he wants to have a change for whatever reason.
If you're appointed for a term of years under Connecticut law, you have to have cause to be removed.
Okay, very
If you're
good. You answered the question.
Yeah, I mean, if you're appointed for an indefinite term, you can be removed for any reason or no reason. But if you're appointed for a term of years, there has to be cause and due process to remove someone.
So
Thank you.
maybe, Rich, it would make sense to expand the language of that paragraph to clarify those two different situations.
But that's governed by state statute, isn't it, Rich, from what you have just implied?
No, it's common law.
Oh, common law?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
and here you get back to the fact that I think it's in 825 where basically everybody under Article 8 is appointed for a 4-year term unless it specifies otherwise.
Kate, what are your thoughts?
Well, I thought I heard Rich creating a distinction between people appointed for a 4-year term who would have to be removed for cause and other people for whom we might not want to require cause.
Yes.
So based in common law.
So
Yeah,
I was asking whether we want to make that possibility clear, and if this is the place you would do that.
You're talking to somebody in me that loves to keep things streamlined.
No, I'm a little confused here. I thought you, Henry, explain again what it is you want to do.
Well, what I wanted to do, you can't do according to common law based on Rich. I was just introducing the idea of having some discretion on removal. And Rich is saying the only discretion that you can have is if somebody's been appointed for an indefinite term, then they can be removed without cause. But as he points out, everybody in this Article 8 have been appointed for 4 years unless it specifies otherwise. So I don't think we've appointed anybody in here for an indefinite term.
No,
So I would just say, or maybe what we could clarify it would be any member of an agency appointed by the Board of Selectmen, the first selectman or the agency itself pursuant to this article. And therefore, say we're only talking about 4-year term people, that would be a way to leave open that if we had somebody appointed indefinitely, they could be removed.
Well, yeah, indefinitely, but like it sounds like everybody in this charter is got a term limit.
right.
Well, not everybody. I mean, we've got, and I hope we never, I hope you continue to serve forever, Mark, but the town administrator is a non-elected officer of the town, and he's not elected for a 4-year term or not appointed for a 4-year term. So there are people that are not for 4-year terms.
But
This raises an important question. So are you guys saying that under the terms of the present charter, you would only be able to remove the town administrator for cause?
No,
No.
well,
I bet that's not what his contract says.
no,
I have a
4 votes.
3-year contract, but I'm an employee at will if a supermajority of the Board of Selectmen decide to terminate my contract.
I think the way to just clarify that would be as say may be removed from, make reference in that paragraph to this article. And then we're saying we're only talking about the officers named in this article as opposed to anywhere else.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, when you say,
It does.
I don't know. I think it's getting more complicated.
Yeah, I think we're addressing something that we don't need to address in more depth.
Yeah, I think it's way more complicated.
yeah,
I'm very comfortable with the way things have functioned in the past, and unless there's some major legal deficiency here that we're leaving ourselves open to some liability, I would suggest personally, my one perspective is that we don't need to make a change in 827.
Yeah, I mean, you basically have the universe of elected officers that you can't remove. You have the town administrator that has his own provision in the charter about his removal. You have the appointed officials that are listed that can only be removed for cause. But I mean, you basically have whatever other town officers there are, town clerk, town treasurer, tax collector, public works director, to the extent that they're officers rather than employees, they can be removed.
But they're all employees.
Right.
they're all employees. Now, for cause, it just seems a vague term to me.
There's a ton of law about it, Judy. It's not that vague.
Okay,
Yeah, how about if we move past this one? Is
yeah,
everybody
we'd have
with
to
that?
reference that, okay.
Yep. You know, I hate meetings that go beyond an hour.
We've heard that, Rich.
Well,
It's
it's
all,
just, it's an operating concept. It makes us efficient.
Yeah, no, I love it. The funny thing is that we're gonna have this meeting to talk about Article 9, and we haven't even gotten to Article 9.
Well, we're not going to get to Article 9 tonight.
No.
Well, that's
No,
going
we're
to
not.
work. So we've got only 3 more sections here. Compensation. Judy, you had some thoughts about this in the past.
well, I think we decided that we couldn't, I was thinking that the first selectman should get more money than what they're getting currently. But I think we decided that can't be in the charter. The amount of money can't be in the charter. The rate of the compensation.
Whether it can or not, doesn't seem like a good idea to me.
I would agree. Can we move past this one?
What does it say? To be sent.
This one just deals with appointed officers anyway, as opposed to elected officers.
Yeah. Because I think we decided it should go back to the Board of Selectmen. So I don't have any other concerns.
829, I don't see any need for a change there unless, Rich, any wordsmithing to be more legally appropriate. And under duties, pretty generic and bland. I don't see any need for changes. Anyone else agree, disagree? Any disagreement with that?
That's fine.
That would have gotten us through section 8. I think this was a really productive meeting. Mark DeRozier, Lisa, you brought up some really good, a lot of good points brought up, and I appreciate all of the perspective that was shared here. I think we all learned a lot too. So with that said, we're not going to get to Articles 9 and 10. We'll defer those to our next meeting. Those were moved to under item 6, new business. We never got there. Audience, I'm going to move on to audience of citizens. Is there anything anyone would like to bring up to us that wasn't already on the agenda? Or anything in general from the public? Okay, nothing. Any comments from members of the commission? I want to thank you for really good discussion tonight. I appreciate everyone's comments.
Would you remind us when the next meeting is?
Yes.
Are we the second Tuesday and the fourth Thursday?
Correct.
March
Oh,
9th.
wait, it can't be second Tuesday. First Tuesday is Board of Selectmen, second Tuesday is Charter Revision, and fourth Thursday is Charter Revision.
March,
So
March.
I have a
Nice.
schedule here somewhere on my desk.
yeah, the next meeting is March 9th.
That's nice.
March 9th.
Okay.
Got it.
Mark,
Correct.
are we having a budget workshop for the Board of Selectmen that night?
Most likely, because I don't think we're gonna finish up on March 2nd,
So maybe we can do it at 6 o'clock?
right? If that works for everybody.
That works for me. Is that good for everyone?
I'll
Well,
try.
can make it.
Okay.
And if we don't need a Board of Selectmen meeting, we'll just leave it at 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion that we adjourn to.
I have one comment real quick.
Oh, Lisa,
Is it-
thank you.
Is it possible to get the recordings on the town website? I know the planning and zoning has all the recordings of the meetings. There's been a couple things I would have liked to have gone back and listened to again. And we only have the written notes. And since they're being recorded, can we put those on the website?
Yes,
Thank you.
Actually, I think the way things are, since everything is virtual, I think through the governor's executive orders that you have to have the audios on the website.
Okay.
I can make that happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll make a motion that we adjourn to March 9th at 7 PM or 6 PM if needed to be scheduled at 6 PM.
Okay.
A second?
that.
Lisa, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That would be unanimous, I think, correct?
Yep.
Thank you, everybody. This is very productive. Good meeting. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.